Well, let's speak now to AgriSA COO Jolanda Andrag, who joins us from Pretoria this evening. Jolanda, good evening to you and thank you for your time. That setup piece that you heard there from the farmer on the ground, who is clear that the picture painted by Stats SA is actually quite accurate. If anything, it could actually be even worse. But you don't agree with the data from Stats SA. Tell us why.
So thank you and good evening to all the viewers. I think firstly from AgriSA's side, yes, we do question the integrity of the data. I think it's important to mention that the data at hand specifically speaks to the third quarter of this year. And what we've seen over the past year is in the summer, there was very dry conditions impacting the field crops sector in particular. And we know that in the first part of the year, animal health diseases has particularly impacted the livestock industry as well, specifically in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal regions. And we are suspecting that it's still having an impact of the industry. However, it is important to note that the horticulture industry has actually performed reasonably well this year, and there's been quite a reasonable bit of growth in that area, especially during the third quarter. Yeah. So from our side, the Bureau for Food and Agricultural Policy has been tasked to review the data. Stats SA has shared the data that they use to calculate the exact amount with them. So once we have affirmed the correct numbers, we will release it. At this stage, we don't want to speculate. We do know that it would be, that we suspected a decline, but we did not expect such a significant decline. So for us, I think speaking to the realities that farmers across the country face, climate change is a reality. I just came back from COP29, and what the farmer from Northwest spoke about is a reality across the world, and farmers have been actively sharing some advice related to production practices and some innovations regarding sustainable finance and green finance. So that's certainly a discussion that we should have in South Africa to assist farmers to sustain production and sustain food security. I think the important thing is to note that production is shifting east in South Africa because of climate change. The western interior of this country is getting drier, and that includes the Northwest region specifically and the Free State. Traditionally, this was high-performing agricultural field crop areas, and we don't see that anymore. So from our side, we certainly empathize with what farmers are experiencing on the ground. We do expect some positive growth in the year, but that does not discount the current hardship that many farmers face across the country.
Yeah. Jolanda, you listened to that setup story and the farmer there, Eric, talking to our colleague, and he says that the winter was extremely cold. Animals, in some instances, simply could not cope. The heat, we are dealing with a local drought, El Nino. I'm sure that I don't need to tell you. And so he concludes by saying industry experts, yes, they can sit around the table, but what is actually being done? If indeed you did expect a decline because you are quarreling with just how significant this decline was, but you did expect a decline, some people are going to start questioning whether you as industry leaders have a good grasp of what is happening on the ground, or are you simply sitting around a table?
No, I agree. I think it's completely, we should not keep ourselves busy with just talking. I think from an intervention perspective, there is some innovations in the land bank space as well as in the commercial financiers regarding transition finance and regarding assisting farmers through period assistance. I think the important thing to state is that drought is not something that's new to South African farmers. In 2015 and 2016, we had a significant drought for a much longer period with a severe economic impact across multiple provinces. And this has been a pattern that repeats itself over the years. I think we need to be honest and say South Africa is an arid agricultural country. So firstly, I think this is not, we've been here before. From an industry leader perspective, I think there's certain interventions that we are working on. The Department of Agriculture certainly needs to come to the table, as it did over the years in circumstances such as this. I think the blended finance scheme of Land Bank is certainly an innovation that should play into this space.
Yeah.
I think more than just finance, it's also about knowledge and knowing how to manage cash flow during these periods. And that is not a size thing, whether it's a large enterprise or a small enterprise. I think as industry bodies, we have a responsibility to share the practices that have carried us over the years, and it has made us, as an industry, incredibly resilient.
Yeah. I appreciate that you don't want to, quote unquote, speculate at the moment, but where were your numbers and who do you rely on more regularly when it comes to these figures?
Look, I think we don't want to call a number. For us, the principle at hand is the data should be fair or reflective of the reality. That's the point. There should be integrity in what is being put forward. I think what we should also realize is the fact that agriculture is in decline shows you also the importance that it has and the impact that it has on a country's growth. If agriculture grew as we or performed as we suspect it performed, the GDP might have actually performed positively on a national level. So from our side, it's not a matter of who we're working with. It's about working with the Department of Agriculture and Stats SA and all industry bodies to make sure what is being put forward is a reflection of the reality.
Who do you rely on for this kind of data?
I think there's multiple players that we rely on. I think the Bureau for Food and Agriculture plays a significant role alongside various industry bodies and Stats SA. I think, the reality is we're speaking of colleagues that we know in the Department of Agriculture and have a long-term relationship with. So this might have just been human error or just a simple misstep in how they went about calculating it. But it's not a matter of who we rely on. It's a matter of getting it right as both private sector and public sector.
Yeah. You've mentioned earlier that a review of these numbers is going to be conducted. Who is doing that, and by what time or what period should you expect to get those figures back, and whether or not they correspond with what Stats SA has published?
So I think we're working with the Bureau for Food and Agriculture, which is a highly respected research institution, and then they've also drafted the agricultural master plan that's currently in place. So from our perspective, BFAP, in short, is a highly respected institution. We do expect a return on what the actual data might have been by early next week. We are having conversations with them on Friday to determine the way forward as well. So by early next week, I think we would have a fair view of what might have taken place during the third quarter.
Finally, as we conclude, you've mentioned in your earlier response that Stats SA did give you I suppose, their calculations, the methods for how they reached this conclusion. What was their outlook, or were they taken aback by you challenging the outcomes, particularly as it relates to the agricultural sector? How did they take it? I'm trying to get to that question simply.
Yeah, I think firstly, the data was specifically shared with BFAP, not with AgriSA as an organization, because BFAP will do the review. I think from our side, we will not speculate on what exactly led to what we believe is a miscalculation or a misrepresentation. Once again, I think we have personal relationships with many of the colleagues in the Department of Agriculture as well as Stats SA. So for us, it's a matter of collaboration. And I think they share the sentiment that the important part is getting it right and making sure the message that goes out to farmers and to investors is reflective of the reality.
Jolanda Andrag is the AgriSA Chief Operations Officer.